we're not in an engineering business. We do engineering. We do very good engineering.
Right.
But the business we are in is building the business case for our clients. Operability is very important. It's not just something we say. It's something we have to live.
Right, you're prepping it for yourself.
We're prepping it for ourselves.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Mining Now. I'm your host, Jared Downey, and today we have third time back on the show, DRA Global. We've got President North America, Pierre Julien, and we've got SVP North America, Vikram Jayaraman.
Hey,
gentlemen, welcome show. For my first time having you on Mining Now, but you've been on 3 times over the years, so welcome back.
Yeah, thank you very much, Jared. Glad to be here.
Has it, well, let's get a little update. It's pretty much a year ago to the day that you did the last interview. Pierre, maybe kick us off. Just what's been keeping DRA busy the last year?
Yeah, it's been an exciting year. Similar story to last year, a story of growth, expansion. In the past year, we've been fortunate to secure some significant business, Tier 1 gold company, Tier 1 projects. We've expanded as well our footprint in North America. As you may recall, we are very strongly based in between Toronto and Montreal. We've expanded with a new office in Phoenix, Arizona, which Vikram has relocated from Toronto down to Phoenix.
Oh, nice.
And battling rattlesnakes and jumping joyas and all those wonderful things. But
during the heat?
Yeah, during the heat.
Summer heat. Holy.
When we moved, it was right smack of 2024 July. My wife's first response was, "What are we doing here?"
Yeah, well, so there's a fellow from Australia that just moved his company out there. And this is Australia. I think of Australia as hot. He said, I got to Phoenix. I never experienced that. And he moved in the summer, right? So he was really getting hit. So you've expanded out there as well.
We've expanded there, and it's really been on the back. We've been in the region for a while. We've been executing a project in Arizona, about an hour and a half south of Las Vegas, called Mineral Park. That project's been in the engineering and now construction phase and scheduled to move into the startup or commissioning phase this summer. So on the back of that, we've been building out the business. We've been awarded some additional studies and engineering in the U.S., so that's expanding fairly well. So
there's something I wanted to ask. It's we live in a little podcast world. Some companies get to be, thousands of views and then millions of views, and some companies stay at 100. It all depends, right, on your strategy. So I understand that world. The engineering world, how have you grown? What do you think it is that separates, and I'm talking about the business development side, a DRA from, being 3 or 4 people and, you just stay there and you have a few clients. What is it about the company, your approach, the culture that you've developed that's allowed you to expand the way you have? I'd like both of your perspective on it.
Yeah, I'll start and let Vikram jump in. You said the word engineering. And, we had this conversation with Gus, I think a couple interviews ago, and I told Gus, I said, we come from the basis of saying we're not in an engineering business. We do engineering. We do very good engineering.
Right.
But the business we are in is building the business case for our clients to assist them in developing a project that is going to be permittable, financeable, and operable. And so we come at it from a different perspective of helping them build that business case.
Was that the original approach DRA took from day one, or did it shift and develop into that?
This was the approach that the North American team took here in North America.
Right.
Yeah.
And the thinking behind that, Jared, is the following, is right. To the point that Pierre made, when you have to be focused on business case, there's 2 important requirements. One, you got to think like a banker. You have to act like an owner. So that's the culture and the value that we have in the organization, the entrepreneurial spirit. To that point, most of our study managers and project managers, we have put them through the mineral economics training and courses, including with the UBC BRIM program and so on and so forth. And why is that relevant, right? The idea is not to make a better mousetrap. The idea is just take a step back and say, do I need a mousetrap? That's probably a very poor analogy.
I've had this conversation before. Yeah.
Yeah. And one of the key aspects of what actually makes DRA different is that when we get into a project, there's 4 important pillars that come into place. One is that, one, like Pierre mentioned, is the technical amenability aspect, which most engineers can do fairly well. But the most important aspect is this project economic. And if it's not particularly economic, what do we have to do differently to make this project work? And if that means bringing in, that's the third pillar, if that means bringing in new innovation and technology and using DRA as an incubator to make that work, that's something we put our hand up willingly and say, we are not the type to step away because it's not been done by 20 other people for 15 years before. We are the first ones to put our hand up and say, this is an interesting flow sheet, interesting project. There are mechanisms to make this work. This is how we can take a step back and bring the different aspects of the project, both from a technical side to make it work, but also keep your focus on the business case at the end of the day, right? And the fourth and most important pillar, I think, is just a part of DRA's DNA, is that because we are also an operations and maintenance company, we appreciate the aspects around operability and maintainability. And what does it actually mean for making sure that the project can seamlessly transition from construction into operations?
So it's a real world
correct
challenge for you, not just on the paper.
Exactly.
So it goes back to the very simple idea. We're very selective about the companies and the clients we work with. And we put in very much a data and science-based focus on the projects that we do want to work, where we look at the possibility, the potential for the project to be financed, to be permitted, and what value can we truly add to those projects. And that's essentially how we mutually pick our clients and our clients pick us.
Let's talk about our heavy industry world tour brought to you by Savona Equipment. Find, market, and sell surplus and used equipment. And Corporate Traveler Canada, helping companies travel the globe simpler, faster, easier. We are heading to events across North America and Australia and filming episodes on location. Email us at info@crownsman.com to be part of Crownsman's Heavy Industry World Tour.
Canam is a leader in steel fabrication and construction, delivering tailored solutions for commercial, industrial, institutional, and multi-residential projects. With 60-plus years of experience, they offer a wide range of products: steel joists, decks, structural steel, prefab building solutions, and more. Backed by expert services in BIM, engineering, and project management. Visit canam.com to learn more.
The mining industry is evolving. Efficiency and sustainability are more important than ever. Drawing on decades of expertise, Aderco's innovative fuel additive enables you to decarbonize your operations without sacrificing performance. Lower emissions, protect your engines, and save on fuel expenses, all with one simple solution. Choose Aderco, the smart choice for sustainable, profitable mining, because you can save money while making a positive impact. Visit aderco.com to learn more.
Yeah, and you mentioned, and we're going to jump into some of how you collect that data and distribute it, but I want to get into the operations and asset management side. Pierre, where is that part of the business at right now?
That's been it's been a unique part of the business, and in fact, it's unique to DRA. There's not a lot of companies in the world that do what we do. So we essentially do the front-end studies. We do the economic, technical studies at the beginning too, as we were just talking about. So we study them, we engineer them, we build them, and that's common for many companies like us, but we also operate them. So we operate process plants. Currently, we're operating 14 process plants in Africa, the Middle East, and in Australia. And these, by operate them, it's really, we're managing the full asset, our client's full asset. So we bring everything to the table. We bring the management systems, the procurement, HR, finance, operations, SCADA, all of that know-how that you need to operate a mill. We bring those systems, we bring the people, we bring the training, and we basically on a contract basis operate these mills. And in fact, we have some clients now that outsource the operations and outsource the mining side. So we have mining companies today that have a model that essentially has them outsourcing those aspects, and they focus on on other aspects that they have expertise in. It might be permitting, it might be financing, it might be pulling deals together. Being great at being able to do deals and have relationships with governments, whatever it might be.
Right.
But that also speaks to what Vikram was saying. Because we design plants that we are going to operate, operability is very important. It's not just something we say, it's something we have to live.
Right, you're prepping it for yourself.
We're prepping it for ourselves.
Right.
So in this model that DRA has, we pretty much do everything but own them. So
Right. What is the big advantage for the mine itself? I'm sure it has something to do with the knowledge and that if you're doing 14, obviously you have a much broader scope than if you're doing one. Is that the main thing, or is there some other ones?
Yeah, that's a key one in that if you're a smaller company or even a bigger one in a new jurisdiction where you don't have operational knowledge in that jurisdiction, but if you're a small company, you don't have 100 people sitting in a head office in Toronto or Perth that has the ability to bring in those accounting systems, bring in those safety systems, bring in those maintenance systems, and has that knowledge. We bring that to the table because operating 14 plants, that's more plants than most mining companies are operating.
Yeah, that's and all over the world.
Like I said, we Africa, Middle East, Australia, and but we, and speaking about Arizona, and I'll let Vikram expand on it. We've now signed up our first initiative. We're into our first initiative in Arizona. Maybe Vikram, you give some more insights on that.
Yeah. Before I talk about the Arizona project, I just want to expand on what Pierre was saying. So in addition to the workflows, processes, systems, tools, procedures, right? So those are the tactical aspects of what we show up and bring to the table, in the places where we actually do contract operations and maintenance. But there's a few steps that happens before that, right? So I'll give you a simple example. Most mid-tiers and junior companies, especially if you happen to be in a non-traditional mining jurisdiction, you have to spend quite a bit of time in actually getting the project ready for operations. We call it operations readiness. That will define what do you need as hardware, software, and everything that we talked about. Most importantly, when do we need to bring people in? What kind of people do we need to bring in? And if that labor doesn't particularly exist in that part of the world, what do we have to essentially set up as training so that we have people that are adequately trained before you start putting them in operations? And most importantly, when you're going into, and this applies equally to Arizona as it applies to others, where you have competing operations that are close to where your asset is likely going to be, some of the best resources are going to be going to places that are well-known and probably pay better. How do you... Right. So in that particular instance, you're going to end up with a labor force that may or may not be 100% adequate to essentially get into the weeds on day one. So what we do then is essentially have access to very seasoned operators and maintenance professionals that sits within the group that have been doing this for over 20 years. We get those guys and girls to come in and essentially be the nucleus for the people that we bring on board.
Are you talking about pulling people from other operations?
Correct.
Yeah, okay.
So this way you have a nucleus of individuals that have done this over and over for it. So we call them internally as tongue-in-cheek the SWAT team, right? But that's really the purpose of these guys and girls is to basically come and bring that accumulated institutional knowledge of how to get it right, get the projects operationally ready, set the systems up, train people. And if there are any requirements to essentially have these labor resources coming from specific communities or regions that aligns with the IBA that mining companies do, these are things that we do beforehand, before these operations essentially get up and going, right? Yeah. And that segues well with what Pierre wanted me to jump in. So in the Arizona case, it's a bit of a hybrid model where most of the O&M resources are basically coming in through our client organization, but in places where they have struggled to find good, solid resources that have done this extensively, we have now seeded those positions with people from our organization. So including, mill superintendent, metallurgists to essentially run the projects, the sampling folks to essentially make sure that, we are accounting for the production going through the mill properly, right? And then in addition to these key positions, we are also bringing in the SWAT team to help the project as it's going through mechanical completion, getting ready for commissioning. These guys and girls are working hand in glove with the team that's been hired that may not be 100% up to speed on how to operate very complicated machinery in that part of the world. So we get these guys, train them. They'll stay with the project for 6 months, during commissioning, startup, and ramp up, so that there's a seamless transition from mechanical completion to operations, with some of the key positions being held by DRA folks.
CIM is Canada's leading technical institute dedicated to the sustainability of our industry. Members enjoy professional growth opportunities through CIM libraries, publications, webinars, societies, and the job board. Experience the CIM community firsthand at the Conference of Metallurgists, August 19th to 22nd, ICARD, September 16th to 20th, and the CIM Health and Safety Conference, October 6th to 8th. Visit CIM.org for more information and join CIM today. As heavy machinery specialists for mining, SMS Equipment knows performance, like the performance they achieve together in a partnership dedicated to the success of their mining customers. At SMS Equipment, they're more than machines from trusted brands. They're the people beside you today and every day, bringing industry-leading technology and expertise to your mining operation. Because the right partnership makes everything possible. SMS Equipment, partners in your possibilities. Discover what's possible at smsequipment.com. Did you know cementitious binders can be responsible for up to 70% of the total GHG footprint of mine backfilling processes? Now you can replace up to 50% of the binder in your mine backfill operations with Graybond, Graymond's new low-carbon cementitious binder. This lime-based alternative binder maintains a 40 to 70% lower GHG footprint compared to typical cement and can adapt to varying mine conditions without compromising performance. Learn more about Graybond at graybond.com.
And that will segue probably really well with something that Pierre can talk through, is that this asset is going to be hooked up to Neuromine, which is a center that we have in Johannesburg that basically connects to all the sites that we operate and maintain.
That was my big question. I was trying to figure out if Neuromine was a central hub or something that you then reset up at different locations. And I think you just answered it. It is a central hub.
Yes, it's
right.
a central.
It's a one location setup.
That's correct. It's at the moment it's a central hub in Johannesburg because we don't have the scale in North America to have a hub specific for North America. But the reason we've gone that route, you can appreciate we have 14 sites. The way the business sets up, as Vikram just said, we engineer it, build it, commission it, start up, operate it, and we normally would go into these contracts for 3-year terms. So as DRA, in order to continue being able to win those contracts and extend that operating contract, we have to show those clients that we can operate their facility better than they could if they insourced it.
Right.
And in order to do that, what we've done is these contracts have evolved to being performance-based. So there's an element of core costs, but they're performance-based. So we wanted to be able to be improving those sites all the time. So what we did is create this Neuromine, connected it to all of the sites. Neuromine Center is not a remote control center. It's an asset advisory management center, and it's populated with data scientists, metallurgists, reliability experts, maintenance experts, and
these are DRA Global.
These are DRA employees sitting in that hub in Johannesburg, able to, and then they have tools that allow them, to analyze big data and then very quickly identify performance improvement problems, potential maintenance issues, potential shutdown issue, whatever it might be, with the final goal to always doing it safely to increase production, throughput, and increase recovery. So basically increase the metal, the payable units out the door. And if we can show that we do that to our clients better than they can, then it's, we win the business on an ongoing basis.
So that Arizona project, would that then get hooked up to the Neuromine?
That is correct, yeah.
And do you have to be involved in the whole process, or are there some times where you can plug in at a later stage? Is it kind of like, is it a process you have to be early on so that you can get it set up so that it's all connected?
Yeah, look, typically, the short answer is it's not necessary, but it's certainly
beneficial. You mentioned at the beginning, picking the right clients and the right clients picking you, so that must be part of it.
So, for instance, the Minopex business, that's the operations and maintenance business. 3/4 of the time, these are companies with whom we have prior relationships with, and where we have proven track record of actually having operated and maintained those facilities better than when clients they had to insource. So there's always that historical context and relationship context that's there, right? Now, there's no hard and fast rule that says for us to essentially hook an asset up to a Neuromine, it should have gone through the hoops of, let's say, the DRA having studied at a concept, PFS, FS. There's no hard and fast rule per se, but it's certainly beneficial. Because the longer you stay with an asset and you understand the technical aspects of what's going to make that project work, right, the better it is for us to essentially think about that beforehand and do the operations readiness much more effectively, right? So the short answer is not necessarily, but it's certainly very beneficial to have that long-standing relationship and having been involved in that project development through its development phases, right?
Yeah. What will be required, you can plug into, a new site, but what is definitely required, you need to have, the asset needs to be ready, or we can assist them in getting ready, but you have to have the baseline technology. You have to have the sensor technology, the instrumentation, the control systems.
Right.
Those
and that was my next question.
Yeah.
So that needs to be implemented,
Yeah.
That should be foundation already.
That's right, because the data we're analyzing is flowing from,
Those sensors.
from those sensors, bearing pressure, bearing temperature, process control loops, level, flow, all of these things. So that's, but if that's not stable yet in that site, we have the capability to go in and help them get to that point.
There should be some foundation, though, to do it, and then you can refine it.
Correct. That's right.
So I was looking at the video of Neuromine, and it looked, what I saw was that there was a big screen. Now, I was trying to figure out, are there 14 of these big screens? Do you switch between, it's like every hour there's the next one, or are there parameters in place in case something like a sensor tells you, oh, there's a wear part is at risk, and you get a sensor, so then you bring that up on screen. What's the actual operation there?
Yeah, look, I can again, both of us are definitely not the experts in that piece, so please feel free to jump in, Pierre, if I'm saying something.
By the way, it looked awesome in the video. It's just the whole network.
So there's two layers of assessments that's going on. One, the guys have done and the girls have done a terrific job in setting up machine learning and setting up algorithms in the systems behind. So what that machine learning stuff is actually doing is that it's being trained over and over and over again to look at the baseline operating data that's coming in from all the sites. The moment the machine learning algorithm starts to see that there's something not particularly kosher, then it triggers a bunch of alarms, and it triggers a bunch of issues that will get popped up with the metallurgist and the data scientist. That'll immediately initiate a protocol and say, look, this is what I see in the system. This is something that you may want to take a look at. When the second layer then is that when these individuals then take a look at it and they start to see that there is actually some meaningful correlation between what the machine learning algorithm is actually pointing out as potential issues, and if they're strongly correlated based on personal judgment and experience from these individuals, that's when these guys and girls pick up the phone and say, you may want to keep a quick eye on your bearing pressures and temperatures because our algorithm's pointing to potentially failing within the next 36 hours.
And just to clarify, you're phoning you, though. You're letting, because you're operating that mine, right?
Yeah. So in many cases, that could be our team that's actually operating and maintaining, but there are some instances when it's not. It could be a hybrid setup where...
Oh, okay. That's the Arizona
That's
example.
Right. So that's a classic example. But we're picking up on the phone and saying, whether the client is us on the O&M side or the asset owner themselves.
But either way, the people that are actually on the ground beside the machine.
Right.
Okay.
So
boots on the ground.
Yeah.
It's not like it's just humans sitting and looking at it day in and day out. And that's an important element which Pierre will certainly talk about, is to have these fuzzy logic and artificial intelligence actually built in with strong machine learning algorithms that's working in the background. And this is what I was telling before, is that we are the group that's not afraid to incubate new technology and innovation. We actually thrive in it. And this is a classic example of how we've actually integrated very strong machine learning that was developed and tuned in-house to do all the baseline assessments. Mm-hmm. It only triggers when there is an issue across the sites.
Right. Okay. That's good clarification. And you mentioned machine learning. We got to talk about AI because you're getting into that world and the world is getting into that world. So let's talk about it. Where's DRA at with that level of technology?
Definitely going to impact our industry. It's going to impact the engineering industry. It's going to impact the study side, the operations. That's without a doubt.
Yeah.
We've targeted two areas where we're focusing our AI initiatives at the moment. So we've focused, we'll cut on the front end studies. So if you think about when a mine is being developed, going through that full preliminary economic assessment, PFS, FS, permitting, they are literally developing all these NI 43-101 reports, the permitting reports, all all of the information that's being developed. And if you ask any junior mining company, they'll tell you they now have 10, 20, 30, 40,000 pages of reports. And so if you're looking at acquiring that asset or investing in that asset, you have a lot of information to go through, and typically that information has been done by analysts. Analysts are usually young engineers or young business grads who just pour through data and try to analyze the data. So
Like they're physically going through it.
they're physically going through it, trying to identify, they've got a long checklist of information. They need to verify that
It's like the lawmakers and the stacks this big. It's like, there's no way.
Exactly. So,
Yeah.
so if one of our clients is doing a due diligence on an asset they're looking to acquire, they would come to a company like DRA or one of our competitors and say, can you analyze this situation and find any red flags for us? So,
Right.
And that is a relatively long process, and you're using very expensive talent to pour through,
What would say, let's say a mid-tier to do that sort of, what would that, do you have a rough idea what that takes in terms of days, weeks?
Yeah, it's weeks to months, depending on the complexity of the asset.
If someone comes to the office every day and just going through it.
Yeah. And it might be multiple people. So we've identified that as an area that we can implement AI to help us go through that data. And now we've developed a project evaluation tool where we've essentially pulled in all of our subject matter experts, all the questions they would look for, all the data they would look for to validate the asset, and we've poured that into the model. And we've essentially we've been running it, and we've taken a process that would take 3-4 weeks, and it's done in 10 minutes.
Really,
and then you've done you haven't found the final solution, but you've gone through you've identified 80% of the work, and now you can give that to the subject matter expert, and he or she can focus on the items where the AI has identified the gaps. So it's going to be quite impactful. You think about every financier in the industry, they have mining analysts. If you follow a junior mining company, they'll say they'll be being covered by this financial group, that one. That's what those analysts are doing. They're analyzing that data and coming up with reports on where the gaps or where the opportunities are. AI is going to impact and disrupt that part.
So I've made this argument, not strongly because I don't know enough about it to really be firm in this belief, but I do have a bit of theory that AI has the possibility to make us more human, in the sense that, for example, just our little show, we used to plan out the topics, do the interview, review the interview, write an outline for the interview, and then re-upload that content to. So there's all these manual stages. But what we're really trying to do is have a good discussion, and then AI can take that, summarize that, and then we make a few we adapt it a bit. But we don't need to now watch the discussion I just had to then write a summary for it. It saves hours and hours of time and allows me to actually focus on, if you want to have a conversation about planning the next interview, I can actually have that with you now because I'm not stuck in an office writing this outline. I think there's an opportunity that people can actually focus on, like you're saying. Now let's actually why do we need someone already wrote out all this data, and someone else is going to read all this data and then redistribute. It's just, you're doing the same thing over and over and just slightly tweaking it.
That's right.
It's a capability augmenter, right? It augments the capability of the individual that was previously tasked with doing that work. And two, it's a productivity improver.
Right.
So now you're able to deploy your subject matter experts and deep technical skill sets to places that's been already sort of identified as being, look, these are the problem spots that the AI agent is suspecting based on the available data.
Yeah.
That you can then put these to these resources on. But to your point, that's exactly it. Instead of spending the bandwidth of individuals to sit and do all of that, again, I'm going to use the word mundane, relatively speaking, mundane work. Now you're able to deploy these guys and girls to places where their subject matter expertise will be utilized much more productively, right? So to just quickly expand on Pierre's point, the way this AI system's been set up is that it's looking for 17 what we call as work streams. So that looks at social license to operate, leadership and management capability of the client's asset that we've been asked to look at, the technical development stage, how much metallurgical test work has gone in, as an example. It's also looking at, what is the level of resource definition, how much drilling has taken place. So these were some of the questions that's been fed into the model, to Pierre's point, that the AI agent is now pouring through tons and tons of information that's been added into the data room by the asset owner. Incrementally, it's also looking for publicly available information outside. So it's crawling the web, and it's trying to find every piece of publicly available information to augment into the analysis. It puts out a heat map, says, here are the 18 pillars of evaluation, and here's the level of readiness for this project across each of those pillars. These are the places that's based on the data that's not as ready or developed as the other aspects are. Now you've got a focused approach on what the major issues that asset needs to be tackled with. Right?
So it's not as ready, or there's data missing. It could be that the data wasn't available, or it hasn't been taken care of, and that's what potentially the potential buyer of that asset is looking for.
Right. I will say, when you say 10 minutes, I wished AI was smart enough to take an hour, just so we felt like there was some effort. Okay, before I let either you go, I want to talk, Vikram, I wanted to ask you about the contracting model. I don't even know the term. It's IPD, so I wanted you to walk us through that.
Yeah, so
let you go.
The IPD is not a new concept by any definition. So IPD really stands for Integrated Project Development. And what does that actually mean, right? So typically, if you look at the more conventional ways of how companies like DRA would engage with a mining company or other contractors for that matter, it would be typically an EPCM contracting model, or it would be an EPC in worst case scenarios. But in other instances, you would have a client that would say, look, DRA, please engineer, give us all the drawings, and then we'll take that and we'll self-perform and self-construct. So these are sort of the typical, what I would call as conventional contracting models. Now, you would have heard this in this conference over and over about, again, which is we don't have enough people. We don't have enough resources that have those expertise that can mobilize to different places where projects are being built, especially when we're trying to compete with other large projects that are being built for things like, as an example, Taiwan semiconductor manufacturing that's happening in Arizona. All the top talent is basically building the $17 billion TSMC facility. There's not a whole lot of people available to go build mines.
Right.
So when you're competing for resources, the natural extension to that thinking is, okay, so let's not worry about the hats. Let's just worry about the heads, which is where you bring people from different organizations, from the client organization, from the contractors, from the engineers. You put everybody into one project team. You take away the association to, this is my company, this is what I'm going to do. You set up the contracts where you incentivize to think for the project and only for the project, right? Where everybody is measured with the same yardstick, and the KPIs are safety, budget, schedule, productivity, and making good decisions for the project. So it doesn't have to be, there's no EPCM hat, there's no client hat, there's no contractor hat. Everybody's sitting there rowing in one direction, and you pull the best resources possible for that project. And that's what IPD is. So the project that we're busy doing in Mineral Park right now, that's based on IPD. Hopefully next year for part 4, we can, when you're saying bring a client.
Bring someone on, yeah.
That's right.
I'd be fascinated to actually hear
that would be a
good
testament to the fact that IPD can work when you structure it right, when you incentivize people right, and when you set up the cultures and values of that team right on at get-go, right? And that's what we're seeing more and more as we go forward in the industry now.
I have to ask this question, though. Sometimes I'll organize 3 or 4 different groups. Sometimes I'm organized 2. And actually, there's a famous, I was this years and years ago, I was listening to, actually was one of the U.S. presidents, and he was saying, you start at the local level in your career, and there's always one guy. And then you get to a higher level, you think, okay, this is the next level, he said, and then there's that one person that just, you can't get past. So, and then you become president, and you're sitting in, there's that one person that just kind of got to stir things up. And when you were hearing that, I thought, it sounds incredible, but that must take a huge level of organization. I understand the end result, but how do you approach that? Get buy-in from everybody, get leaders from each organization. How do you get them all pointed in the same direction sharing information. And I don't mean just like the willing to share, but sharing it on time,
Yeah.
everybody on the meeting, all that sort of stuff that takes. How do you approach that?
Look, there's four fundamental things that happen before you get to that, right? So the first thing is, for instance, having very clear roles and responsibilities for everybody that's in that team. So they know what they're responsible for. I'll give you a simple example. So on the project in Arizona, we have people from the client organization that are reporting into the project. That's reporting to a project manager. That's a DRA person. So that's the first thing, which is to get that organizational structure right, define and develop the RACI matrices so everybody knows who's accountable, who's responsible for their specific functions.
Your client, do they agree that this is going to be the
correct
the org chart, essentially?
Absolutely.
Right. So that's the fundamental, is to say this is so let's take a step back. Egos go out.
Right.
We can't have, I'm owner's team, I can't be taking orders from you or anything like that.
Right.
If that's your function, if that's your responsibility and accountability, then we're going to look each of the square in the eye and say, why is that piece of work not done per plan?
Right.
So you define the org chart, you get the RACI right, and then you have clear charter that says, this is what we're going to do as a team. You storm, you norm, you do all of those things before you get to perform, right? So that will happen in any project, regardless of whether it's IPD or not. But the fact that you set this concept earlier on, even before it goes into detail engineering and design, it gives the team an opportunity to do that, which is form, storm, norm, and perform. By the time we're performing, we're already past all of that stages, right? So that's the second thing. It's the timing of the setup. The earlier you do it, the better it is for the project.
Right.
The third thing is, to your point, how do you make sure information's coming in? How do you make sure that decisions are being made? So there's two levels of decision making, right? One is what we internally call as a delegation of authority within the project team, where if there are certain decisions that need to be made very quickly, depending on the complexity level, depending on the dollar level of the decision, that's been very clearly defined in the charter to say, I'll give you an example. Somebody's doing something at site. You need to quickly fix a bunch of rebars because it's not up to spec. Who can sign off on that decision? It doesn't have to wait and go up the chain all the way to the top and you're waiting a day and guys are sitting there and twiddling their thumbs, right? At a certain levels, the area manager could say, get it done, signing off, finished.
Right.
And then you have levels that go up. Big critical items that require serious thinking, serious decision-making go to the steering group. The steering group is now composed of people from the client, the engineering organization, the construction contractors. These are the executives of these organizations that are sitting in the steering group. The project team reports to the steering group, and the steering group makes those decisions, right? Once again, it goes back to the structure and the vision to set it up correctly. Sorry, Pierre, did I miss anything at all in that?
No, just and really emphasizing that contractually, those groups have essentially the same contract. The construction company, the engineering company, the owners, individuals, they're incentivized the same. So the KPIs are the same. And that means that if the KPIs are scheduled, they're budget. So there's a schedule issue in the morning. The DRA team, the construction team, people are not going, hey, you didn't do this and I didn't do that, and pointing fingers. They're going, we got an issue. We're going to solve it together because we have the same KPIs.
Right. The agenda really is syncing everybody up anyway.
Yes,
right.
exactly.
So you have that baseline to start. Yeah. You kind of touched on the beginning, but to wrap things up, what is sort of the next year looking like? What is the plans? I mean, you've done quite a bit of moving this year. Is it sort of building on those foundations, like out in Arizona, or what is sort of the focus for the next 365 days?
All right, Vikram.
Yeah, look, thank you, Pierre. So there's three components to our strategy. The first one was very much the geographic expansion. So do what we're doing well in one place and replicate that in another place where there's strong demand for those skill sets and expertise. So that obviously is the geographic expansion part that's happening through the expansion in Arizona. There's also other potential locations that's in our strategy for expanding DRA's presence in North America. So that's a geographical expansion capability. The second aspect is very much improving and increasing the share of advisory services. And advisory services, to what Pierre was talking before, that's doing the project readiness, consulting aspects to help more of our financial clients and more of our, the M&A that kind of comes across to us for due diligence purposes, debottlenecking, going to sites and helping them essentially solving issues so that they're able to get back to where they need to be on the cash, on the cash cost curve. So that's the advisory services component that we are very keenly tuned in to improve and increase the share. Because for the very simple reason is that the advisory services 3/4 of the time turn out to be the nucleus for additional engagements, and 3, they tend to be the conduit for essentially DRA to expand their services and capabilities as that project goes through whatever lines of definition that needs. So that's the advisory component that we are obviously very keen to improve and increase. And the third is to really hone what we have developed as a very strong capability in the market, which is DRA is now well known for copper gold, rare earths, lithium, nickel, cobalt, and we're starting to do more and more of those projects is to keep our eyes and focus laser focused in those areas to continue to hone those segments that we've established ourselves as leaders. Did I miss anything, Pierre, on those 3 things?
No, those are definitely the key ones, and a continuous deployment of DRA. About 2 years ago, we started a very large initiative around our internal systems. So in the project management world, there's a lot of legacy systems that have been built over the last 20 or 30 years. But there are new tools, new technologies that are allowing you to integrate multiple aspects of project management, estimating, cost control, scheduling, document control. Those, if you look 10 years ago, they were all separate software, separate systems, and you maybe try to bring them together, but they weren't tightly integrated. And so we've been on a journey to deploy a system called Innate, an American company, and that is really transforming how we work as well, because it's all about data, and now it pulls all the data,
removing those silos.
Removing those silos of information flowing between the different aspects of project management.
Well, it looks like we got a few things then next year. There'll be a few updates then.
Part 4, correct? Yeah.
Gentlemen, thank you so much. I'm glad I finally got to be the one to do this interview. It was a ton of fun.
Thank you.
I'm going to try to weasel my way in to do the next one.
All right, you'll have to arm wrestle Gus for it. So.
Well, then I won't be doing it. Okay. Thank you.
Jared. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody, for watching. You can connect both with both our guests, as long as you're okay with putting your LinkedIn in the thing. So put their LinkedIn. We'll have a link to DRA Global, their website, their LinkedIn, if you want to follow the company page as well. Please subscribe to mine now. Thank you for watching. We'll see you on the next episode.